Chapter 1. The final ticket. The brass buttons of Elias's uniform were polished to a mirror finish, though they felt heavier than they had 40 years ago. He moved through the carriages of the midnight express with a practiced, rhythmic gait, his boots clicking against the floorboards in synchronization with the low, guttural thrum of the diesel engine. To any observer, he was the picture of professional detachment, the veteran conductor ensuring the sanctity of the route. But inside, Elias was counting. He was counting the sleepers, the signals, and the minutes remaining until he could step off this iron beast for the last time and vanish into a quiet retirement. The Midnight Express was a relic of heavy iron and velvet, a rolling sanctuary of dim amber light and the scent of old tobacco. As the train began its ascent into the Iron Range Pass, the temperature dropped. Outside, a thick, oppressive fog swallowed the landscape, pressing against the glass like a living thing. Elias reached the final carriage. The transition was abrupt. The warmth of the previous cars vanished, replaced by a biting, sterile chill that smelled of ozone and wet stone. The overhead lamps flickered, casting long, skeletal shadows across the empty seats, and then he saw her. She sat in the very last row, a pale smudge against the deep crimson velvet. She wore a dress of a faded, indeterminate hue. Her hands folded neatly in her lap. She didn't look up as he approached, but the air around her seemed to vibrate with a frequency that made the hair on Elias's arms stand up. "Ticket, please," Elias said. His voice sounded thin, stripped of its usual authority. The woman did not move. She didn't even seem to breathe. Elias frowned, pulling the leather-bound manifest from his pocket. He flipped through the pages, his finger tracing the list of passengers. The carriage was supposed to be empty. There was no one listed for the final car. No ticket had been sold. No reservation had been made. "Ma'am," he pressed, stepping closer. "I'm afraid you aren't on the manifest. I'll need to see your ticket." The woman slowly turned her head. Her eyes were not empty, but they were exhausted, heavy with a grief so profound it felt like a physical weight in the small space. She didn't speak. She simply looked at him, and in that gaze, Elias felt a sudden, violent jolt of vertigo. The train entered a tunnel. The acoustics shifted instantly. The steady roar of the diesel engine transformed into a deafening, metallic shriek that echoed off the tunnel walls. The sound wasn't just noise. It was a scream, distorted and amplified, mirroring the sudden spike of panic in Elias's chest. He backed away, his heart hammering against his ribs. It's just the altitude, he told himself. The fog. The exhaustion. But as the train emerged from the tunnel, the world outside had changed. The fog had turned a bruised, sickly purple, and the mountains of the Iron Range Pass seemed to lean inward, threatening to crush the tracks. They were approaching the Black Gorge. Elias stopped breathing. He knew this stretch of track. He knew every curve, every rusted bolt, and the exact spot where the earth had once swallowed a train much like this one. 40 years ago, the Black Gorge Derailment had been scrubbed from the official records. The company had called it a minor signaling failure. They had paid the families in silence and buried the evidence in shallow graves. Elias, a junior conductor at the time, had seen the truth, the rusted brakes, the ignored warnings, the corporate negligence that had turned a journey into a massacre. And he had taken the promotion. He had taken the envelope of cash and the promise of a secure career in exchange for his silence. The woman, Clara, stood up. She didn't walk so much as glide, the space between them collapsing without a sound. As she approached, the carriage began to distort. The velvet seats tore open, revealing rusted iron ribs. The windows cracked in spiderweb patterns, and the smell of old blood and scorched metal filled the air. The train was no longer moving through the mountains. It was moving through a memory. "I didn't—" Elias stammered, his back hitting the sliding door of the carriage. I was only following orders. I was young. Clara stopped inches from him. She didn't scream. She didn't accuse. She simply held out her hand, palm up, as if waiting for something to be returned. The train entered the heart of the Black Gorge. Outside, the scenery vanished, replaced by a swirling vortex of wreckage and ghosts. Elias could hear them now. The echoes of 100 voices calling out into the dark, the sound of twisting steel, the final, breathless silence of the fallen. The pressure in the carriage became unbearable. Elias felt as though the air was being sucked from his lungs, replaced by the suffocating weight of 4 decades of denial. He looked into Clara's eyes and saw not a ghost, but a witness. She had been the one who tried to warn the crew. She had been the one who screamed before the plunge. "I saw the brakes," Elias whispered, the words tearing from his throat like shards of glass. "I saw the failure. I knew the signal was wrong." Clara remained still, her gaze unwavering. "I took the money," he shrieked, the confession echoing through the spectral carriage. "I sold you. I sold all of you for a gold watch and a pension." The moment the words left his lips, the screaming acoustics of the gorge vanished. The oppressive weight lifted. The torn velvet mended itself, and the smell of blood evaporated, replaced by the faint, clean scent of rain. Clara looked at him one last time. A small, sad smile touched her lips, not a gesture of forgiveness, but of release. She began to fade, her form dissolving into the silver fog that drifted through the open vents of the carriage. Elias sank to the floor, his polished buttons clicking against the hardwood. He wept, not with the relief of a man saved, but with the heavy, liberating peace of a man who had finally been found guilty. The train slowed. The rhythmic clack of the rails softened into a gentle hum. The conductor's whistle blew, signaling the arrival at the final station. As the doors slid open to a silent, moonlit platform, Elias stood up and stepped off the train. He was a retired man now, but as he looked back at the empty midnight express, he realized he was finally traveling light. He was alone with the truth, and for the first time in 40 years, the silence didn't scream.